Good evening and welcome to Wednesday night Satsang, the principle and the practice of unity. Just invite you now to just take a deep breath in and just allow yourself now to punctuate this part of your week with a breath that comes in and acknowledges all you've been doing and an out breath that releases the stress and the worry. And just allow yourself to be filled with slow and even breathing throughout this hour with us. As you breathe and let go and prepare, have this opportunity to come into a new space within yourself, a letting go and an opening up, breathing into your heart and allowing yourself now to feel your connection with all of life, with all of the love, with all of the peace, with all of beings everywhere, near and far, long ago, now, and into the future, breathing and knowing it's all here, it's all right. It's all good. And so it is. Amen.
Whatever you've experienced this day, we know that the power and presence of God is here. Until we allow that awareness to wash through our thoughts, wash through the busyness, the worry, the concern. As we sing together, let this great power wash through. Oh, let this great power wash through, wash through. This great power wash through, wash through. I don't have to wonder what to say or what to do. Just let this great power wash through, wash through. Oh, let me see the light in you, in you. Oh, let me see the light in you, in you. I don't have to seek to see the truth. Just let me see the light in you, in you. Oh, let this great power wash through, wash through. Oh, let this great power wash through, wash through. I don't have to wonder what to say or what to do. Just let this great power wash through, wash through. And so we shift to our mantra chant, Om Namah Shivaya, recognizing the divinity within and the divinity within each person as we know this truth together. Namah Shivaya.
And so we prepare for this time apart, our time of meditation, by closing your outer eyes, finding a balanced seated posture, feeling the soles of your feet connecting with the earth beneath you, opening up in the chest to give some space around the heart, so you can breathe more freely, bringing your attention into the breath, allowing the belly to relax with your inhale, and release on the exhale. Breathing in and letting go. Noticing the flow of the breath like a wave upon the ocean. The tide flowing in and out. Noticing there is a natural rhythm within you that simply is shifting from doing into being. Human being, allowing yourself to be sitting and breathing and at peace. I invite you now to notice if any thoughts are arising into your awareness. And to notice if any of those thoughts are what you might consider negative, fear-based, lack-based, concern, worry, stress. Simply noticing them as a thought. Recognizing that if you are noticing it, then you are in witness consciousness, because it could not be otherwise. And so that is a success. That you're able to put some space between you and the thought, the thinkingness, the busyness of the mind. To be able to observe and notice. it is through this simple act of noticing the repetitive thought patterns that can bind us unconsciously. As we make them conscious, we become free. Know with me, I am awake and aware. I am present to my thinking. I have a mind, but I am not my mind. I am infinite presence showing up as me. I sense my beingness from the top of my head to the soles of my feet and in my auric field around my body. I am presence. I am here. I am grounded. I recognize that my thoughts are only a tiny part of my whole self, my whole experience of self. They are not myself, they're an experience. So I let them go like clouds in the sky passing by. Grateful for their presence. Grateful for the ability to see with new eyes. To be consciously awake in my own life. The one life that I am. I am life. I am one with all life. And in this awareness, I have come home to peace, to God, to oneness. Breathing and letting go. We close this time of practice in gratitude for the body and in gratitude for the beauty of this human experience. Being on this planet at this time, we are grateful. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.
And so this is the time in our service that we take a moment to allow ourselves to feel, as we return back into our bodies, the fullness of the life living in this body as us. We take a few moments now to feel our heart centers filled with light and love and enough. We allow that love now to be the overflowing, the initiator of sharing what we have so beautifully and fully received throughout our lives, throughout our day, throughout this week already, the blessings, the gifts. Let us share from that place of overflow, of enough, that we may share with this ministry so that what it is that we give with the love we feel, and allow that love then to take it to the ends of the earth and share it with the world in the form of teaching and truth, of light and love, of example, of wholeness, of raised consciousness and awareness, of generosity and compassion. And so as we breathe together now, I invite you, as you gather your gift together in whatever form you prefer, whether it be text to give or on the website, the various ways you can share, or in this room in physical form, however it is. I invite you now first to reach into your heart and bless it with the love that you find there, by blessing it together and calling it by its name. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive, and so it is. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, God. One of the pleasures of being human, I guess, is that we're able to play hide and seek with God. And we come back to an awareness of it, and whoa, there God was all along. This song is about raising the veil and putting our own human consciousness in closer contact with that ever-present God that was always there, always is there, can't not be there. You're encouraged to sing with us when you're inspired. I'm raising the veil between me and my God. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil between me and my God. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil. I want to know you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to see you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to hear you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to feel you, want to praise you. Oh God, I'm raising the veil. I want to love you. Oh God, I'm raising the veil
Between
me and my God. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil. So it is.
Raising the veil. Thank you both so much. Wonderful Daniel Nahmod tune. So what are we raising the veil about? What's on that other side? God on one side, what's on the other side? So we're going to talk about that a bit tonight. Thank you to those of you who are here and who are connecting with us on the live stream, that you're open and willing to know more about your ego. We can play in this playground of discovery of the human experience, which we are all experiencing. So as I share with you about the ego and the roles of the ego, one thing that I found comforting to me as I've gone on the spiritual path is knowing that we are all on the same human experience. We're at different locations, different homes of the course, family, and all that kind of circumstances stuff. But as far as the inside, the ego structure, we can relate, right? So I hope that brings you peace and doesn't make you feel like, oh, wow, she's really talking about me tonight. Talk about y'all. So what are the roles you play in your life? We all play many, many roles. So just think about what roles you play. I can think of mine: mom, daughter, sister, spouse, minister, customer, driver, leader, follower, member, online user, consumer. Think of all the different roles that you play. Have you ever noticed yourself acting differently in the different roles that you play? Do you show up differently with different people and in different circumstances? It would make sense, right? That you would talk to your child differently than you talk to your boss. Right? When there's a power differential, when you have some power, superiority over someone, or seemingly do, you may act differently than you would to someone that you believe you have power or control, who has power or control over you, or vice versa. So we're in the fourth week of this A New Earth Eckhart Tolle study, and we are on the chapter role-playing, The Many Faces of Ego. So how do we recognize the ego in us? How do we recognize it? It might seem like, well, that's easy. That's an easy thing. I should be able to know this. But the thing is, the tricky part is that many of us are so identified. It's actually, Eckhart Tolle says, usually we are so identified with the roles that we play that we're unconsciously acting out those roles. And we're not even aware that we are the roles rather than functioning in those roles. You see the difference? So you can have a function, you can be doing things, or you can take on that role as your identity. I think about my background prior to ministry. One of my previous careers was in acting. I studied acting and performed in acting. And one of the approaches to acting is called method acting. Have you heard about method acting? That's where you put your life into the character. And so you have a character that is contemplating a murder. And so you have to think, well, when in my life did I want to do something like that? Maybe I didn't want to murder somebody, but I felt angry about it. And then you work up that anger, right? And you put it in, and it's like you're really becoming that character. And some people can be so invested in that experience of playing a role that they get lost in it, and it kind of becomes who they are. You may have heard about the experience with Heath Ledger when he played the Joker, and how traumatizing that was for him, because he really became that character and ended up creating some psychological issues that led to the end of his life, unfortunately. And that's just an example, a very drastic example of that identification with a role so strongly that you lose that sense of separation of being able to see yourself playing the role. That was one thing that I noticed when I was even the most invested in a role, that there was still that part of me that knew I don't want to run into that person, or when I do that dance move, and when I that there's some tech people off stage, and make sure I hit this cue and pitch, and all these things that are technical aspects of the performance that are not the person, the character, right? So my mind is working double time, and so it's what is that awareness that knows this is not me, this is a role that I'm playing, or not the presence that I am. So what are your many faces? And sometimes we literally look differently depending on our role. We put on a hat, a costume, a wig, uniform, glasses, depending on what we're doing. Working on the computer, I've got my glasses on, and I'm studious now, I'm a student, or whatever it happens to be, right? We put on these different faces. So the ego, why does the ego play these different roles? Well, the ego plays roles to get its needs met, right? Its needs, I need things from people. The ego thinks, well, I can't sustain on my own. How could that be? When I was a baby, I needed my mom or dad to give me a bottle or breast milk in order to eat. So I recognize that the needs that I have come from outside of myself, and so it grows and grows as more needs that you need as you age and grow, right? So our adult needs need to make money, get attention, feel a sense of power, superiority, or specialness, or some kind of physical or psychological gratification. So these are the needs that Eckhart Tolle tells us that the ego is looking out for. What can I get from other people? That's the main stuff. So not all the roles that we play are obvious. Some of them are subtle, okay? And most often we're completely unaware of this because we become our roles. So one thing that's important in 12-step recovery is the first step is what? Admit you have a problem, right? So you admit, yeah, I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict. So you're recognizing that your behavior, right, your role, and in recognizing that, that's where you are able to take that step and see yourself rather than being like just completely immersed in it. So you admit you have a problem, and codependent people can so often they're having enabling behavior with somebody who's an addict, and they don't even realize it because they think I'm being loving and caring to that person, and not recognizing their role in enabling their addiction. So that's another part of 12-step. Recognizing that role can be an unhealthy way to get a need met for respect or love or whatever that is coming out of that relationship. Need to be a giver. So the egos are getting this need met to be needed by someone. And even in family systems, We can even get assigned a role. Like in my family, my mom is here. I'm so grateful my mom is here. And I was born last. I was born way last because the closest in age to me, the child who's the closest in age to me is 9 years older than me. So I was the baby. And whether or not I want to be the baby, that was my role. I'm still the baby, aren't I, Mom? Still the baby, right? So, so it's like I could accept it, or I could put some resistance in there. I don't want that role. I don't like that. And I know I have done that. I admit I have done that. I don't want to be the baby. I'm a grown-up. I'm an adult. Stop calling me the baby, you know. So, yeah, there are roles that we get assigned and roles that we choose. The problem here with the ego is really that the ego doesn't recognize that the source is within you. So that's why the ego is looking outside of itself, seeking energy outside, not interested in the formless attention of presence that we truly are, where our true energy and life originates and flows from. It's like, that part is a mystery. I don't understand. I can't. It's hard to get in touch with that. I know the world. I know people outside of myself, and I know stuff, and I want it, right? So the ego's thinking about that. And it was really interesting about what he had to say about people who don't want attention. So what about the people who don't want attention? Shy people, for example. Is a shy person free of ego? Because I don't want attention. I'm okay over here. I'll stand there. He says that this is actually just the negative side of the ego, because this person, shy person, and we've all probably felt shy in different situations perhaps, they're afraid of attention from others because they fear their disapproval or their criticism. So they're afraid that whatever they do when they put themselves out there, that they'll be criticized, and then they'll feel a diminishment of themselves. And behind that fear is that feeling of being inadequate. It's on the other side of, I'm shy, I don't want to get up in front of people, perhaps that's the thing, because I don't want to be criticized. And if I'm criticized, I'm going to feel less of myself, and then I'll really know that I'm inadequate, which is what I really believe about myself to begin with, right? And he says behind every negative self-concept, such as one like that, is a secret desire to be the greatest and the best. Isn't that interesting? That on the other side of being a shy person that doesn't want attention and is afraid of criticism, that there's a secret desire in there to be out there, to be the best, to shine, and to succeed. So whenever you find yourself feeling inferior to someone or superior to someone, either way, that's a way to notice the ego. That's the ego in you that's showing up in that awareness. Some egos, if they don't get praise or attention, they settle for negative forms of attention. You've probably seen this in children. I've seen it. And I'm sure I've done it. Yeah, I check in with my mom on that. If they can't be famous, well, they'll be infamous. They'll seek notoriety, and that's their ego saying, please tell me that I exist, that I'm not insignificant. So they make some trouble in the world. A very, very common role of the ego is the victim. The victim. We've all played a victim, thrown a pity party, woe is me, seeking sympathy from everybody, telling my story and my problems, right? Getting into the drama. Feels so good to just get in there, bring everybody down there with you, right? Every therapist knows that this victim ego does not want their problem solved. They don't want the problem solved because the victim identity is part of their identity. That role is who they are. They get energy. Their ego gets energy from it. And if nobody wants to hear your story, if you're a victim in the victim role, well, then you'll tell yourself over and over and over again, I've been treated unfairly by life, by other people, by fate, or by God. Why not throw it on to God too, on top of all that? So very common, this victim consciousness, victim role that can be played. Role playing is also very common in romantic relationships, or so-called romantic relationships, as Eckhart Tolle says, that we are attracted to people who the ego feels can make us feel happy, make me feel special, and fulfill all my needs. Prince Charming or Princess Charming, I don't know what the princess version is, that they're just going to be this perfect solution. Everywhere in my life where there's emptiness or lack or sadness, well, they'll just come right, swoop right in and fix that, right? Well, that could happen in the beginning. He tells us, we'll play those roles. I'll be who you want me to be. You'll be who I want you to be, and so forth. And it gets harder once you move in together. Once you move in together and you got the toothbrush up on the sink, that's when you start noticing things about each other that you don't like. Underwear on the floor, or something worse than that, maybe. It's hard to keep up those roles, especially if you're trying to be a perfect boyfriend, girlfriend, so forth. You can't keep it up. So what happens? You see each other's raw ego, and you see each other's pain body, who's now angry, because now you're not being seen as perfect and the ideal person. You're being seen as all your stuff, right? That you didn't want seen, that you're trying to hide, that you thought, oh, here's somebody who finally sees me as who I really am, which is all good stuff and none of the baggage that I've ever had, right? So there's that situation in relationships that can happen again and again, that the other person is now failing to remove for us that sense of fear and lack that is actually the core of the ego, a sense of fear and a sense of lack, which is what they were helping us to resolve temporarily until the truth was seen once you're in situations together in the home. So have you ever noticed subtle changes in the way that you speak to different people? So you'd speak to the manager in a restaurant different than maybe the server or the busboy, right? You speak differently to a child than to an adult. Why? Because you're playing roles. When you're not yourself, whether you're talking to the janitor or to the chairman, you are identified as your role. And Eckhart talks about a school teacher who would be in a situation with parents and adults and would still be talking to them like they were children. And he said she just could not disidentify from that school teacher. She was so identified in that role. She was not conscious that she was still being the school teacher when she went home and talked to her husband and her kids and out in social situations. It became who she was. So you're not actually relating to another person at all. You're relating to your mental image of that person from the mental image of who you think you are. So this is why Eckhart Tolle says we have so much trouble with relationships, because there is no true relationship. You're relating from a created mental image of yourself to a created mental image of that person. So can we do our work to be with each other as we are, rather than as we've projected or created each other to be, as well as ourselves? He tells this great story in the chapter about a Zen teacher named Kazan, who was scheduled to officiate a funeral, and it was a funeral of a nobleman. And when he arrived, all these lords and ladies showed up, and they were in their finest attire. And he noticed that his palms got sweaty as all of these heads of state showed up. And he did the funeral. And the next day he returned to his disciples. And he confessed to them that he was not yet ready to be a true teacher. And the reason for that was that he noticed by his sweaty palms that he was not able to acknowledge and know the sameness of bearing before all human beings, that he was lacking that, and he was making them superior, these people superior to him, that whether beggar or king, he felt that it was his work as a Zen teacher to experience all people as the same. And so he decided to leave. He left his disciples. He went off to study with another teacher, another master, and he studied with that person for 8 years. And then he returned to his former disciples enlightened. So he had to learn to look through social roles and conceptual identities and see the sameness in every person, which is our work. It's our work to do. So how do we let go of these self-definitions that we are living by? In ancient times, people were born into a caste system, and they were assigned roles: ruler, a priest, a priestess, a warrior, a farmer, a merchant, and so on. Now, that was their function in society, but they didn't see it as a role that they played. They saw it as who they were. I am the priest, I am the ruler, I am the beggar, or what have you. Oh, there were only rare beings in ancient times, like Jesus or Buddha, who saw that class and the caste system was completely irrelevant. It wasn't true. That they were temporarily, these roles were temporarily obscuring the light that is the truth of every being, that is the divine nature of each human being. They could see that, and so that's what they taught. And so Eckhart Tolle says that whenever somebody says, I don't know who I am anymore, he congratulates them. He says, good work, because he says that it's better to be in that space of not knowing who you are than to be so identified with your role, the role that you've been given or the role that you're playing. And he asks, can you cease looking to thought for an identity? Can you? Can you cease looking to a thought, thinking, a concept, a form for your identity? Because that limits you. As soon as you box yourself into that, it limits you. So what if you let go of the need of knowing who you are? Just let that go. The need to know who I am. I let it go. He said, when you do that, when you really do that, when you let go of the need of giving yourself an identity, a persona, a role, that then you will enter into a state of peace and clarity that is closer to who you truly are than any thought could take you. I thought that was really fabulous. So we all have that to do as our work. So what matters not is what your function is in the world, but whether you identify with that function to the extent that it takes you over and becomes a role that you play. Because once it becomes a role that you play, then you go unconscious. Recognition creates that space between you and the role, and it begins to free you of that role. So we've been talking about that space, that awareness, that noticing. So how do we give up role playing? If we're all doing it, can't we all just stop at once? Wouldn't that be great? Just stop this and remember who we are. We're doing that, right? Eckhart Tolle says, to do whatever is required of you in any situation without it becoming a role that you identify with is an essential lesson in the art of living that each one of us is here to learn. This is a main point here in what he's teaching us. Do whatever is required of you to do. Show up, do your work, interact with your colleagues, give meals to your children, or whatever it is, whatever your normal functions are, but not to notice, to perform it for its own sake, rather than to identify with the role. He says every role is a fictitious sense of self. And he follows it with this: if the egoic earth drama that we're all in has any purpose at all, it is an indirect one. It creates more and more suffering on the planet because we're the ego trying to get our needs met. It's never satisfied, right? And the suffering, although largely ego-created, is in the end also ego-destructive. It is the fire in which the ego burns itself up. Isn't that amazing? That you see people who have gone through really hard struggles in their lives, and often they can be the most gentle and caring and humble. You can either take that situation and allow it to lessen the ego in you, or you can get angry and resentful and strengthen the ego and give it more power. If you allow your heart to soften through that experience, to let go of the chains that bind you, to let those go and to be with the suffering. Now, we want to protect our children from suffering, don't we? That's the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, that his parents tried to protect him from all suffering in the world, and he felt his life was so shallow. We can let children become shallow in that way when we try to protect them from everything. We need to have experiences that cause suffering because it allows us to grow through them. It's okay to make mistakes because that's how we learn. That's how we learn. The ego wants to tell us otherwise. No, avoid that. You've done that. Don't let your kids do that, right? Or others. And he says that suffering drives you deeper into the presence and that it eventually destroys the ego, but not until you suffer consciously. You can suffer unconsciously forever, but once you suffer consciously, that is when you awaken. It's the thought, I should not have to suffer, that makes you suffer more. And it's the acceptance of the suffering, the dry throat. Tonight, I seem to be experiencing, I accept it. I have water to help this out. And it is in this moment. He says we can dissolve the human ego by bringing it to the light of awareness. Just bringing it to the light of awareness for this new earth that we are all creating and that we're all longing for in our hearts. He encourages us to form enlightened collectives. Enlightened collectives, so that's groups of people who come together who have chosen to no longer identify with their egos. And he says that these groups can create a vortex of consciousness that will accelerate the planetary shift. So that's how we see our work here at Unity, that we're a vortex of consciousness, that we're coming together to know the truth together of our divine nature, our true nature, the light, the love, the peace that we are. And in knowing that together, we create a powerful, transformational, energetic shift on the planet every time that we join together in consciousness. Ego, in a basic definition, is merely the experience of separation from life. I now say, my life, I, me, and I think I'm separate from life. So we're coming back together into the awareness that I don't have a life, I am life, capital L, life, I am life. So please know this with me, repeat after me. I don't have a life. I am life. I and life are one. I and life are one. I and life are one. And so it is.
Ooh, boy, howdy, you did a great job with that. Ooh, you took us all around.
So there's a
Yes.
lot more good stuff in there if you want to read it yourself.
Well, I
Juicy
remember
one.
when we were planning it, and we kind of like paged through it. It was like, I was thinking to myself, thank God she's got this chapter. It's like, I'd never get to the other end of it, but you just did a brilliant job. I want to just go back to the role playing. No, I want to go back to the part that really stuck for me, which was that the ego doesn't know that we are infinite source. The ego doesn't know that about us. So the ego can only calculate and compare from what's outside of us, right? So like you were saying, it's always doing all this thinking, this I, me, my, and how I compare and how I'm better than or less than in any given moment, and all the attendant feelings that follow those thoughts and all of that. We're all very conscious. I mean, I think we're all familiar with that process that goes on inside of us. We think it's us doing it, but it really isn't the truth of us. It is our ego, the tool that we use as the interface with the world, right? Which it needs to be our servant instead of our master, and moving us around. But I loved that distinction that you made. I'm going to try to hold on to that for my own practice. And the role playing. And what I loved about it was the way that you talked about how we change costume for whatever role we're playing. And I was thinking, just as I was leaving this evening, my granddaughter was at my home, and as I was getting ready to run out the door because I was late as usual, and I didn't have time to visit very much, I just gave her a quick hug and kiss. She said, Grandma, how come you have to get dressed up even at night to go to work? And I was like, I'll tell you later. And I just ran out, and I thought, she noticed a costume change, So anyway, that's enough about me. I want to hear what you thought.
Did you want to respond to that at all?
No.
Yeah,
great.
it was fascinating to hear you say that the ego isn't able to identify with the infinite source. And just the way you phrased it, it made the ego a little character, distinct from my identification with the ego. Maybe it's just a little trip of my own head there, but I guess I have been identifying in part with my ego, and it's been navigating through all the distinctions you've been drawing forth. And I noticed it last week, and even more so this week, that ego's all about comparison. It's about how I am like that, how I'm like that, how I'm not like that, how I'm better than that, how I'm not nearly as good as that. It's inherently comparing. That's its nature, seemingly, and that's sort of a rat race. There's no winning that game. If everything is all about comparison. And something else that you said earlier that I thought was very interesting is that it's not even that the ego is interacting with a set of circumstances. The ego is manufacturing that side of the conversation too. It's like my ego is identifying with whatever little bit of righteousness it's attached to in that particular moment, and then it is making up the story that it is interacting with. It's projecting what you are and what you're saying, and that is really insidious, isn't it?
Yes. Tiring. And it was really interesting in the chapter, you talked about people who are going through great health challenges that actually our ego takes a lot of our energy. And when you're going through a health challenge, that a lot of your energy needs to go to healing your body. So actually the ego gets less energy, and that people towards the end of their lives, that it's like the light is so transparent in them. they're so much purer, even though their bodies are suffering. In essence, they are like more pure light. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I also, when I was reading this chapter, when I read this book years ago the first time, the disappointment in how insidious and how much of what I thought I was making spiritual progress, was really just spiritualized ego. It was really just my ego going, yes, oh yes, we have definitely attained a new level of amazingness, right, and wisdom and all that, and it's like, and it's like, and yes, that's right. There's other people can notice it in your face, Karen, and I mean, just like all that self-talk, right? That's just like, and I have found that for me, because everything you were describing about the rat race, and is that if you'll notice that ego, even when we are winning, like we go above, like, oh, well, I think I did better than, I think, I did, I was pretty darn good today, whatever. How long does that last? I mean, how long does that last before, but this area, I still have this, right?
Well, or even shame on me for thinking I'm better than that other person.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if I wake up to that. But you know what? Ego doesn't care. Ego does not care. Ego will continue to move out of that box and into the next box, because it will constantly keep you outside of peace. I'll tell you, ego has an allergy to peace. So peace is the antidote. Yeah. So my focus, I try to remind myself that when I'm feeling this, I'm chasing the rat around, as you said. If I can just go, peace is the goal. So how can I feel peace? When I feel peace, I'm at one with everything. I'm at one with everyone. I am not better than. I'm not less than. I am equal to. I'm the same. We're all doing the best we can. We're all out there doing, right? And as soon as I get there, that's where I get to peace. So I try to spend as much time as I can chasing peace, or trying to fall back into peace, or trying to find peace, because in that moment I am not my ego. I don't really know who I am, but I am not my ego.
Well, I really loved the affirmations at the end. It's a matter of identification. What am I identifying with? So I have a body, I have thoughts, I have feelings, I have opinions, I have, and I am life, and I am God. I am a godly presence. I can identify with the eternal self that breathes me, and it honestly is that simple. If I can take a breath and just identify with that peace, that eternal stream that moves through me, then the ego can have a little rest, and I can come back to a sense of center.
Yeah. And there are even moments when we aren't experiencing ego just naturally. He shares that. So we can notice that when that happens, that we don't have to work for those. It's like, oh, I'm present. I'm here. I'm with you, and not. Another thing I noticed about ego is how ego fills in the gaps. Like, I know about Karen and David, but there's other things I don't know. So my mind will maybe make up some other things to say, oh, that is maybe why this happened, or why this was said, and that kind of thing. Wait, was that said, or was that my other? See, because the mind is just doing that, right? And to be present to that. Okay, all right, I'm present to this is what actually happened, and this is the story I made up around it, because my mind needed more story around it, because it didn't understand or whatever. And so we'll try to come back to you guys and have honest conversations.
Which is really, that is so important. That is a key, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was going to also, there's so much in what you said, but I know we're running out of time. But the whole thing around relationships, right? That ego is really all in the middle of all of our relationships. It is it's ego to ego, and then it's wounded child and pain body to pain body and wounded child. It's like, how do we ever stay together? How do we ever live with one another? And really, there was a beautiful model that I came across in understanding how when we partner with someone and we get past the ego, like you were describing, all of that, they only see the good part of me. I'm finally loved for who I really am, which is all my good stuff and none of that other stuff back there. But the thing of it is they have different opinions about what my good stuff is, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't do that. I don't know where you got that from. It's like, that's not, I thought you were talking about this back here, but no, oh, you're talking about that? Nah, that's not a problem. And, it's like we're trying to figure out all of these things, but the deal is that we're actually instinctively drawn to each other to work out those soul changes, those agreements to move into the very thing where I'm hurt and wounded and you appear to be, the person who's hurting me, in the same way, or your habit always strikes pushes my button or strikes that wound. And I have something that I inadvertently do and so it's for the love that we share to hold us in close proximity so that we can begin to do what you were just saying. When we have a mistaken notion or we have a curiosity or we need more information, that we ask about it and we learn from the other rather than project onto the other. And that becomes, it is therapy, it is all the other things we do, but it is the healing that love really brings us together for the purpose of healing our souls. It's really not just so we can have a 50-year-old, celebration of 50 years together and a golden anniversary cake, It really is so that we can become healed in each other's love. And I think, that just gave me goosebumps, all over. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
Well, let's take those goosebumps into our prayer time. How about that? All right, so with your hearts open, with your awareness of that your innocence is really what's at work here. Your innocence is your love, is your life, is the power within you, your beautiful, loving self, your intention to serve, your intention to bring your gifts to the world, your intention to have compassion, to learn forgiveness, to relieve suffering, your own and others. And so whatever it is that you have upon your heart, for yourself perhaps, or for conditions that you would like to see changed in the world or in your life, and in the lives of those you love, for anyone that you see suffering and you wish to remember now, in the field of our love amongst us in this room and within the sound of my voice, in the distance, as you are watching this experience through live stream, you too are a part of this prayer time. And in this field among us, in this pure love, we now surrender and name the conditions and the people whose lives we would love to see enhanced, changed, and brought to a higher vibration of life and good. We speak those words, those names now. With open hearts, using the love that flows through us, we now bless the world. we now bring into our lives more light, more spaciousness, more freedom, more power, more wisdom, more peace, more love. All of it. We speak it now. We know it now. We remember it in the coming hours and days. We return to it over and over again. For this is our power. This is our purpose. This is our life. And so it is. Amen.
I invite you to stand and join in our metta practice. Let us send deep metta to the people of the Ukraine tonight and all those in our world who continue to suffer from COVID-19. By the power of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they know the sacred joy that arises in the space beyond suffering. May they rest in equanimity that knows no grasping or hatred. May they experience the equality of all beings. May my practice be a benefit to all.
Namaste.